I've played tons of NES games, but I've only beaten 63 out of 715, and in the upcoming year, I'll likely play more and more to expand my knowledge of the console. That being said, the topic of today's video is something that's probably gonna rustle your jimmies: overrated games on the NES. I've made videos that gave you nostalgia, now I'm gonna destroy it and spread it like Marmite on toast that you'll probably throw in my face, and that's okay, because this is simply an observational opinion. Make sure to be sitting down so that the reality of my horrible takes don't slam you into a wall at 60 miles per hour. Although I am actually curious to hear what you think, and to equally hear what you believe are the most overrated games on the platform. Let's begin. Super Mario Bros. Is a rite of passage on the NES, and for many of us, it was the first Mario game we ever encountered. For me, it was the start of something great when I was a kid, the exposure to a long lineage of games tied to the Mario franchise. The thing is, it's aged horribly. I remember playing it as a kid and thinking, wow, this is groundbreaking, and everybody at my school talked about it. As an adult, going back to playing it, I think it's incredibly slidey and kind of hard to control. I mean, that goes without saying. I can beat it in one sitting or even half a sitting if I farm lives with the turtle trick and warp to World 8 with a fire flower, but even then, Super Mario Bros. 3 was so much better than the original game. And if we want to spice it up, it's better than Super Mario Bros. 2, the US version at least. Super Mario Bros. Had 3 releases on the NES, and it really saturated the market. Honorable mention of Duck Hunt because the combo cart is more common than blades of grass. To me, this is the original risk versus reward / get good / why is the seaweed electric game. Sure, the AVGN covered this in his early episodes, but before you ever watched AVGN, you likely already knew what you were getting into. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is a labor of love. It's a chore to make it to the Technodrome, and should you make it, you'll rapidly realize that the game is designed to screw you over. There are design elements of the game that genuinely frustrate me, and most of the stages feel the exact same except for the background changing. You learn rapidly which turtle to sacrifice to the seaweed gods because you'll be able to recover them in the airfield level, and then you prepare to be pegged by the Technodrome and its major difficulty spike. Once you lose all your lives on this stage, it's very discouraging to come back and play it. But then again, I didn't give up. I rose to the challenge with the power of save states. Take that, Konami. And yes, I used save states, and yes, I marked the game as cheat on my game list because I'd rather play a game with the intention of beating it and enjoying the whole presentation of it versus slaving away my patience and mental health to beat something through insane repetition. Oh, Jesus. Yeah, Battletoads. First 2 levels of Battletoads are great. Then you get to the rat race, the turbo tunnel, snake jumping nonsense, and rotating tower. This game is dumb, but it's popular because of its difficulty, and let me tell you something. Difficulty does not make a great game. Accessibility makes a great game. Affording the player the opportunity to learn the key mechanics without going on an LSD trip of ambition is something that I feel will always attract consumers to your product. But hey, if obnoxious difficulty is what you're aiming for, then you'll find solace in the comfy, poisonous arms of Battletoads on the NES. In retro circles and discussions, this game always comes up for being notoriously difficult, borderline impossible to beat with 2 players because of the races. I see people trying to take it on quite often, and while they do eventually beat it, they end up looking like Randy Marsh after his balls become so big he has to wheelbarrow them around. It's quite a feat, honestly, but I'm not bothered by it. One day I'll beat it, and guess what? It's gonna go right back on the shelf where it belongs. Super Mario Bros. 2 is the black sheep of the franchise, but some people do enjoy it. I don't mind it, but I do mind the idea that Japan thought the original 2 was so difficult that they needed to reskin Doki Doki Panic for US consumers. That's what happened. If you ever take the time to play the original Super Mario Bros. 2 on the Famicom Disk System, or even as the lost levels on Super Mario All-Stars, you'll see that Mario 2, while insanely difficult, was incredibly fun. But Super Mario Bros. 2 on the NES is a different ballgame. Nintendo was incredibly ambitious with it, and all the character traits for Toad, Mario, Luigi, and Peach directly correlate with the abilities of the characters from Doki Doki Panic, and in some ways, I feel that it was written into the canon of the universe, especially where Luigi tends to jump higher and Peach floats around in some games. I don't find Mario 2 to be fun in the slightest on the NES. I played the Japanese release of 2, I even own it for the Famicom Disk System, and I found it more faithful of a continuation. Mario 2 in the US is a chore, and it tends to slog along in comparison to Super Mario Bros. 1 and 3. Historically, Little Samson is one of those late-era release games that are infamous because of the price point associated with it. Little Samson, on average, costs in excess of $400, with the most ridiculous copies going $2,000 loose. Yes, loose. It's also common to see this game being faked for fraudulent profit, but if you actually buy the game, you'll see that it's just shy of being a generic platformer. You bought something as a status icon and not because it's a good game, which, bully for you. I wish I could afford a Rolex that I'd look on my shelf as well, but I'm fine with a Fossil watch from Macy's. I wish I could afford a Lamborghini, but I'm fine driving my wife's minivan. I wish I could afford Little Samson, but I'm okay with buying about 50 games for the price of just one. Little Samson is not innovative, and while it is moderately fun, I found other platformers of the era to be much more playable. In my opinion, Mario Bros. 3 is one of the best of the best, and I would be hard-pressed to find a game that can beat it in the platformer department on the NES. I noticed that a vast majority of my viewers, they're not subscribers. It would really help me out in my dream to share gaming with the world if you hit the subscribe button. I would absolutely love to have you as part of my journey into exploring the history of retro gaming. It's sad to say that this is one of the most popular racing games on the NES, but that isometric hanging from space camera, it really chafes my, well, you know. RC Proam, as the title implies, has you controlling RC cars and engaging in vehicular combat with the enemy AI and winning races, of which there are 32. Well, the box art claims there's 32, but in reality, there's only 24. And I remember making it to track 25 and thinking, did they really recycle tracks? Did they really run out of design ideas? To which the answer is yes. Yes, they did. The big issue for me is the camera. It really amplifies the nonsense of the controls and adds an unnecessary difficulty to the game. I will never forgive games that create difficulty due to design oversights from programmers, but the game was successful and it spawned quite a few other games, of which are a mixed bag. I prefer the Genesis version, but even then, it's basically the same game with very minor quality of life improvements. I have tons of friends who swear by this game, and you know what? It's fun. Don't get me wrong. It's absolutely fun if you like doing the same thing to the same people, saying the same things over and over and over and over and over and over again. River City Ransom, or Street Gangs if you're from the European region, is a non-linear game where you go around beating the shit out of people without realizing you're playing an action role-playing game. I love the art style of Kunio games, but through and through, this is just a cult classic on the NES. Now, the newer games, such as River City Girls, absolute bangers. And I feel you should check them out, but River City Ransom, it generates mixed reviews for a reason. The repetitive nature was just way too much for me, but if you're playing with a friend, then it becomes somewhat tolerable. That's how I beat it, with a good friend Lord Knight Caleb Com, who literally carried me the whole way like luggage from the terminal. Everyone gets a boner over Punch-Out, which they consider a sports game, but I consider it a rhythm game. Why? Because this isn't your normal boxing game, it's a game where you respond and counter to specific attack patterns. Now, the non-Mike Tyson's version of Punch-Out wasn't that bad. I actually enjoyed it. Was it difficult as hell? Yeah, of course. But you could learn rather quickly how to adapt to the fighting styles of each boxer. Even Mr. Dream wasn't that bad once you understood his pattern. Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, on the other hand, was simply a waste of my time. Yes, Mike Tyson's version came first on the NES, but boy is it overrated. This game is simply memorization on a level that I wasn't mentally prepared to deal with, and I didn't enjoy the game in the slightest. The game was popular because of Mike Tyson's name, and it was released before he won the World Boxing Council Championship. This wasn't unheard of. Celebrity or athlete endorsements of video games are a solid strategy to sell games, but I do feel that this one is incredibly overrated. And honestly, I don't know if there's any difference in Mr. Dream and Mike Tyson, so let's just say the entirety of Punch-Out on NES. All three versions, the Famicom Limited release, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, and regular Punch-Out are just overrated. Metroid is a standard not only of video gaming on the NES, but also in the creation of a genre. The Metroidvania genre, which was spawned by the abhorrent map design of Metroid combined with the exploration of Vampire Killer, an offshoot of Castlevania 1 designed for the MSX, resulted in something known as a platform adventure game. You know them as Metroidvanias, more power to you. Rolls off the tongue better. For me, I didn't like Metroid, but I did beat it. Did I use a map? Bet your ass I did, because Metroid's map system is so obnoxiously big that it was overwhelming and just generally unfun. In some ways, this was Nintendo Power the game, and you know what else was? The Goonies too. While there are elements of the game I enjoy, like the physics and the controls, having to grind for basic ammunition due to reaching a roadblock in exploration is incredibly annoying, and I've yet to return to the franchise because of it. I can hear the "What the hell?" from across the world as one of your favorite games on the NES flashes before your eyes. Yes, Ninja Gaiden is overrated. It's a fun game, the physics are perfect, the controls are smooth, and as a hack and slash platformer, this game takes the cake for being everything that someone could hope for in a challenging game meant to test your mettle against a never-ending onslaught of enemies. But I challenge you to consider one perspective. Ninja Gaiden is the litmus test for everything wrong with the NES. Every single trope from this era of gaming you can possibly think of is present in this game. You have knockback physics, that is to say, when you get hit, you go flying backwards. You have pits of despair that you magically gravitate towards if you get knocked back. You have infinitely spawning enemies that knock you back into the pit of despair. You have phantom hitboxes, which stem from too much shit being on the screen, which means you have potentially invisible infinite spawning enemies knocking you back into the pit of despair. And a punishment that occurs after 6-1 if you run out of lives. Imagine playing an entire game and getting used to the economy of death, because you will die often, and having the ability to restart at your current stage, and then magically you don't. That's a tough buy for a consumer. It made my heart sink just for a moment. That one incident kind of led me to instantly hating Ninja Gaiden. Now I beat it, yes, it took a lot of time, patience, and nicotine, but I did beat it. And I did not feel any satisfaction in beating it, but I did. I haven't even bothered with the sequels, but I'm sure they contain the same elements as Ninja Gaiden 1. Maybe they don't. I'll find out the hard way. How did you feel about this list? I know it probably upsets you. This is kind of in some ways a direct attack on our memories growing up, and that's a tough pill to swallow. But the good thing about this is that it's an open communication about some of the games that we feel are extremely overrated on the platform. So feel free to comment down below your opinion on this matter. Tell me I'm wrong. I'm okay with it. I look forward to like 800 variations of the same comment. Hit that thumbs up button and don't forget to subscribe. I am trying to gain a little bit of visibility and make this, something a little bigger than it was yesterday. As always, from my family to your family, good energy, good vibes, Fortifier out.